So, Brian, I think what I want to start with, first of all, is just congratulating you for making the list. This was a lot of competition. Every year we have about 300 entrants, and it's always good to see who actually makes that final cut. So I want to start by asking you about your team. Why don't you describe your team to us and also what's unique about your team?
Yeah, well, Rhonda, thanks so much. Really appreciate the congratulations. It's, for the first year that we've been eligible to make it, it's something that really does matter to us. Our people absolutely are our backbone of our organization. So having this award in particular, where it, is from them, it's based on how they feel our company is and the culture that we're creating and things like that. So, we are super lucky that we have just an incredibly talented team, and they're fully committed to really make our organization help, achieve, our mission, which is to make people's lives easier in the cloud. In my career, I've never had really the opportunity to work with such a great, talented group of people that not only are just, really smart, but they complement each other so well and enable each other's success. What we find is that everyone, in a day-to-day activity will take time out to help answer each other's questions. When maybe there's that time when a customer has an issue, there's not a sense of passing the ball back and forth. Everyone just kind of wants to jump on and really help out whenever possible. So you combine that kind of attitude with the fact that finding cloud professionals in today's market in Central Maryland is extremely tough. There's just so much demand for the skills that we have. We do offer, I think, a pretty unique work environment, and when you have a core team that's really good, it seems like that team can even attract even better talent on the outside. We are fortunate enough to have an absolutely amazing recruiter that this year alone has helped us add 19 people to the company, which is pretty incredible considering all the challenges that COVID has brought everyone, but just the fact that we've been able to grow and add that much more talent to our team.
You clearly built a great work culture. So what one piece of advice would you give to somebody who's watching right now and saying, how do I build a great work culture as a CEO? What piece of advice would you give them?
Well, it's a lot of challenges that I think that we all face. I think one of the first things that I would say is to involve as many of your employees as early on as possible. So what we found is that culture doesn't just come from the top. Culture is something that needs to be built within the organization. So your role as a leader of an organization is to enable and channel that discussion from your employees and get that collaboration happening. To really just enable that to be something the organization can grow into. So when we first started Cloudtamer, we had 8 initial employees. And so we pull all 8 people together into a room, and we actually established together our mission, vision, and values. And a couple months later, what we did was we pulled those same people together in our first all hands, and we started to talk about defining culture. And those weren't things just like, do we do a monthly happy hour, or do we do things like that? Those were really defining, like, what do we want the core being of our culture to be? So, today we have multiple individual culture champions within Cloudtamer to help instill our 6 values. So those are innovate where there's opportunity, continually improve every day, take ownership of individual efforts, but working as a team, always sharing knowledge, turning customers into fans. And then our most recent value we've actually added has been to celebrate our differences. And so after onboarding with our operations team, every new person that we add to the company, I meet with in the first week. We try to reinforce those values there. And then over the first month, each person then meets with the individual VPs that run the different departments within the company to reinforce those values. And so, what we found is that this really gives new members of our team that sense of purpose. And that's kind of the foundation, I think, for culture. Then you need to add the fun things that keep people engaged outside of the company's day-to-day, right? So we do quarterly innovation days where everyone in the company has the opportunity to work on something completely different than what they're normally doing. So, those have been building a magic mirror for the office, to a Slack bot, to Alexa enabling something inside of our core application that we offer to customers. We have several Slack channels that, especially during COVID, have become, even more prevalent. So things from, highlighting kids' accomplishments to pets' accomplishments to home renovations to whiskey recommendations. I mean, you name it, we've got a little bit of a community inside the company to do that. And then, we also just try to sprinkle in ways that we can help, kind of our greater community, in the local region. So last year, we participated in an event called Make a Mark. And that really helps, I think, show how, our organization can, take our creative, kind of skills and just kind of make an impact in the nonprofit community. So that, I think, when you look at the foundation of the values, that kind of adds the walls and roof to really kind of build your organization.
So as you mentioned, this is a very unique time to try to build a company culture. And it sounds like you and your team came up with a lot of creative ideas. Even in doing the survey, we were really cognizant of the fact that we were doing a survey in the middle of the pandemic and how would employees respond to it. So it's an extra credit that the companies we recognized this year were selected during such a challenging time. But can you share with me what you learned during this time?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of lessons learned. I feel like every week is almost a new lesson learned. One of the biggest things I think that we have learned is how to embrace remote work and employees. So when we first started Cloudtamer, we were based in Fulton, Maryland, and we had probably a radius of maybe 30, 40 miles right outside of Fulton that we had mostly all of our employees that were based out of. And there was a kind of pretty much every day of the week, people would come in the office and collaborate and work with one another, have meetings and things like that. And that was really unique, I think, in just the culture that we had and just the camaraderie that was built. And so one of the things that I think that COVID somewhat forced us to do is, can we take that and do that remotely over Zoom, over Teams, over other means? And so what we tried to do was make sure that despite us all not being in the same physical place, we could still have interactions. And while there's always a gap, I think, in going from the physical to virtual, the fact that, we are very fortunate in 2020 to have, video conferencing that's available from multiple providers. And, what we try to do is make sure it's super easy for anytime we're having a discussion about something. Let's just hop on a Zoom and talk it out, right? Let's not let that fact that we're not within 2 feet of one another to walk and talk to somebody at their desk be that limiting factor. So we enabled little, kind of plugins inside of Slack, so someone can just type /Zoom, start a Zoom meeting, and then kind of have that conversation. And so with that, it's really, I think, enabled us to look beyond just hiring always right here in the Central Maryland, greater Baltimore region. While there is a tremendous amount of talent here, there's also a tremendous demand for that talent. So one of our recent hires, we've actually gone that we're looking for someone with Google Cloud platform experience as part of an ongoing feature that we're adding to our overall support of Cloudtamer. And what we looked to do there was to go and actually source outside of this region. We actually ended up finding a person that had that skill set in Minnesota. We hired him, and now I've brought him into the team. So this pandemic, while certainly providing all sorts of other challenges, I think it has helped us learn how to look outside and just kind of attract and build an environment that really you can have remote employees as well as employees that are based in the area to be really successful in your organization.
So that's a lesson that will take you beyond the pandemic, because you'll be able to use this here on out. So do you think you will continue to source talent from outside the area now that you know how to seamlessly do it?
I think we will look there. I think there's still, for certain skills, we want to have, sometimes those people to be here. One other example, we have a digital marketer that we hired during the pandemic, and one of the things that she had asked us was, what's the feasibility to do relocation, right? And I think that, we are going to be looking at those options, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that we're continuing to find ways to attract talent in this area. We have a very unique proposition, I think, inside of Cloudtamer.io, in the sense that we focus very heavily on, again, building a core software product, which in this region, there are a ton of IT service companies. There are slightly less startup-y product companies, right? And it's a different feel. It's not, how many hours you work. It's what's the impact of the work that you're doing. And that really, I think, helps us attract a bit of a different, it's a different talent pool, but also talent that's maybe looking just to change things up a little bit, right? Maybe they have been working in cloud and helping customers in a services organization for a long time, but they want to have a quick departure from that they want to see what it's like working in a product-based organization that has this common drive around this one thing that we're building for our customers that's going to make them super successful and super happy.
So clearly you learned a lot from this process, but you didn't always have this level of knowledge. So if you had to go back to your younger self and you were day one as CEO, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't do it. This is going to be really hard. I'm just kidding. I think one of the biggest things I would say is be prepared to lead people, not just in business, but in life as well. I think if anything, beyond the pandemic, one of the things that we've seen is that the society we live in is unfortunately very broken, and there's a lot of cases of just absent leadership. And I think employees are really looking for companies to be the example, and CEOs should be seen as that kind of North Star for setting that example. So, as a company, we have to make sure that we, establish, what it's like to be that example organization. And, as a CEO, especially a young CEO, that was something that I think was completely overlooked in my regard before this year of, how much beyond the core aspects of a business, right? Profitability and just the core metrics around, our overall business growth and customer growth, about that almost corporate responsibility that you have to instill that in your organization. And that's something that we've tried to do, and I've tried to kind of learn from other CEOs and hearing how they've really kind of tried to embrace that. But that's something that really isn't taught in business school, right? That's something that is really something that you have to kind of see the impact of that and understand the demand is there. And you just have to provide that avenue that you can, use your organization to set an example, and that organization then can work inside the local community to set even a better example there that then can go and ultimately change the world in the areas that ultimately a lot of our employees, are extremely passionate about. And then as a society, we should also be always striving to improve.
Well, you certainly put your company at an advantage by being so good at what you're doing in terms of culture. Certainly makes it much easier to hire talent when there's a lot of competition. So I want to congratulate you once again, Brian, for all you're doing, and keep it up. We can't wait to see you next year on the list, because obviously if you can do it during a pandemic, I cannot wait to see what you do going forward. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Rhonda, so much.